Hello everyone. Apple has just announced a new iPad lineup, which includes, for the first time ever, the large 13-inch size available as an iPad Air, not just an iPad Pro. And I think that's fantastic for musicians. So 4 years ago, I upgraded from this rather ancient iPad Air 2 to an iPad Pro 13-inch. And that, plus the addition of the pencil, was really fantastic. The bigger real estate in the pencil made it so that now I only use the iPad for sheet music. I'm going to be doing a video about that process, but for today, what I want to do is just kind of a little bit of a hot take on what this means for musicians and which iPad you should get right at this moment in time, or compare some options. So before I talk about iPads, let's talk about the new Apple Pencil Pro, which looks the same as this Apple Pencil 2. It offers 3 new features. One of them is not really specific to sheet music. It's the ability to use Find My, which is great, but again, doesn't affect the actual sheet music experience. But then it's also offering the ability to squeeze the pencil to, for example, change tools. So right now, you can double tap this to change tools. So I have it set up to, I can be writing, and then I can double tap, and it changes to the eraser. I'm not sure if you can see that, but that's quite useful. And it does take a little bit of extra movement, or it kind of gets you out of the flow a little bit, though, to do that double tap. So that will still be available in the new Apple Pencil Pro, but you'll also be able to just squeeze. And I have a feeling that's going to be even more efficient and will feel quite nice. As well, you can also use that as an option to squeeze to bring up a context-sensitive menu. And then the other feature is the ability to sense the rotation. So obviously, if you're painting or drawing or something with a variable width tool, by rotating it, you can affect the width of the tool. But also, again, you could squeeze, bring up a context-sensitive menu of various tool options, and then rotate to pick the one you want. And I believe Fourscore has used that now. That's an option in Fourscore. So I think that is potentially quite nice and quite useful. Again, sort of quality of life upgrades for the pencil, I think only help the experience of using the iPad for sheet music. So let's look at some options and kind of compare them. What I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the new iPad Pro, the one that was just announced, the new iPad Air, the 13-inch, very exciting, and also an older iPad Pro. So I'm going to compare these two to the 5th generation iPad Pro, and that's because in North America at the moment, you can get this as a refurb on the Apple Store, so very safe and reliable and basically as good as new, but cheaper. And so that's kind of a stand-in for this idea that maybe it makes sense just to buy an older iPad. So you can see the prices there. They're in US dollars, and they include the cost of a pencil, because if you're going to use this for sheet music, you definitely want a pencil. So let's look at what the differences are. There they are, same size. We'll talk about the screen in a moment, the various different M chips. And as I've talked about before, we don't need the power of the Pro for reading sheet music for what we do for Fourscore. And so already this iPad Pro, which is the 4th generation, so just before they introduced the M chip, M series chip, it's already overkill. And now the M chips are amazing. So, okay, the iPad Air is the M2 chip, not as powerful as that new M4 chip, but plenty powerful enough for what we do. So again, this is kind of really irrelevant. Cameras are irrelevant. Position of the front-facing camera is irrelevant. They all have USB-C. Great. Now here, this could potentially be a deal breaker for you. The Pros use Face ID and the Airs use Touch ID. So again, this Air uses Touch ID and the Pro uses Face ID. I actually personally like both systems. Either one, I'm happy with either one. But for some people, it could be a deal breaker. They really prefer one or the other, so something to be aware of. Better audio quality on the Pro, great, but again, we don't really care about that, blah, 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 blah. So the new Apple Pencil Pro is only works with these 2 new iPad models, the iPad Pro and the new iPad Air. Whereas the older iPads can support the Apple Pencil 2, so something to be aware of. And they all start with at least 120 gigabytes of storage, 128. That's plenty, more than enough. they're all basically the same form factor. Now, the new iPad Pro, of course, is, if you've seen the advertisements, it's very, very thin, super thin, which is kind of cool as long as it's durable enough. And it is lighter than the Air. And you can see it's actually 100 grams lighter than this 5th generation iPad Pro. As someone who is currently doing a lot of travel, that is a bonus, right? Trying to keep weight down is always something I'm aware of. But really, again, once it's on the music stand, it doesn't really matter, and yeah, it's all going to be fine. So let's get into the display, because here I think is where we see sort of the big difference. So basically what we're looking at, same resolution, right? Same size, same resolution, but this new iPad Pro offers the brightest iPad experience yet. And so if you play a lot outside, maybe that is attractive. Now, I want to show you the 4th generation that I'm using. It is maybe the same screen as this new iPad Air. Again, I actually haven't tried any of these, right? They're not out yet. But same screen. And I've done playing outside for my Harpist in the Wild series, and I've never felt that, oh no, the screen is not bright enough. It's always been fine. But if you do a lot of playing outside, maybe the new Pro is worth it for that. Now you can see here, again, if we compare this with a 5th gen as well, it is a slightly better screen, this mini LED. But again, I am perfectly happy with my 4th gen screen. I think it looks great. So I think, yes, it's a better screen, but for what we do, it doesn't really matter. Now there's also the refresh rate. So Pro Motion Technology. It's Pro, we must have the Pro. This basically is Apple's way of saying that it's an adaptive refresh rate that goes up to 120 megahertz as opposed to 60, which is what the iPad Air will have. You will find that this can be a bit of a divisive issue. Some people can't go back to a lower refresh rate. That is just, they love the higher refresh rate, and some people maybe even aren't aware of the differences. You will notice it most if you're scrolling up and down on something or games or something like that. For a static something such as sheet music, where it's not moving until we actually turn the page, it's probably running at under 120 refresh rate anyway to save battery life, because it's an adaptive refresh rate. So now, again, the one that I have, this 4th generation, has that Pro Motion technology, as does the 5th generation we're comparing the price on. I didn't notice any sort of a difference in terms of refresh rate and the iPad, the sort of the sheet music experience switching from the Pro to this, from the iPad Air to the Pro. So my feeling is it doesn't really matter for what we're doing. And then, Apple Pencil Hover. So this is another thing about the Pencil, that starting with the M2 chip, so this is also then available on the 6th gen, which is an M2 chip, there's this Apple Pencil Hover. And basically what it means is the iPad will detect if the pencil is hovering, is nearby. And what this means for us in terms of Fourscore is it's actually, I think, a better solution. So right now, my iPad does not have that hover detection. So I have it set up so that I can just go and write, and it will automatically enter annotation mode. And then when I finish writing, after a slight pause, it will exit annotation mode automatically. I don't see it, it's seamless, and save what I've done. But what can happen is there can be a moment where it's exiting and saving, and but I want to try and write again, and maybe it won't write. So it's a solution, it works fairly well, but I think the hover is actually an even better option. So that is a bonus to the M2 chip and later. And then after that, again, all this stuff we really don't care about, basically the same battery life on all of them. So where does that leave us? What does that mean for someone, say, wanting to get a new iPad right now for reading sheet music? Well, again, I think it's so fantastic that we have this cheaper option. This iPad Air is great. So if you compare the iPad Air, the new iPad Air, with, say, the new iPad Pro, we're giving up a better screen quality, but we're saving $500. And that screen quality, I think, won't really affect what we do in terms of reading sheet music. So to me, it's an easy choice unless you need the Pro for other stuff you do, or unless you're willing to spend the money and want that better screen. But I think for most people, the iPad Air for reading sheet music is fantastic. Then if we compare it with an older gen iPad Pro, again, in this specific case, we are saving, what is it, $40, $50. And we're getting a better screen, not a huge upgrade in the screen, but a better screen. But we're giving up the Apple Pencil Hover and the new Apple Pencil Pro. And to me, both of those seem important enough that I would definitely get the Air, especially because it is a newly released iPad. It will have a longer support in terms of software updates than an older gen iPad Pro. It will presumably last longer. So those are my thoughts, at least, not having actually had any hands-on experience. But again, I think it's just fantastic, whether you're looking for an iPad right now or not, that this bigger form factor, which is what we want for reading sheet music, it's so nice for reading sheet music, that it's finally available in a cheaper category. And I say, bring it on. And yeah, so I hope you found that useful. And look, as I say, for another video coming soon about my experiences these last 4 years using an iPad exclusively for sheet music. Cheers.